Great. Thank you.
And let me introduce our speaker for tonight. And thank you all for coming and making this a warm and wonderful evening for all of us. Lynn, I've known about you for many years, but I didn't really know much about her past until I arranged to have her come here to speak to us. I think I got this right that you're from Deerfield Beach in Florida
Right.
originally, that you attended Florida State University where you studied art history and religions.
Right.
You graduated from there in 1969, and you live now in the Chapel Hill, North Carolina area, where you're a member of the branch there. And you founded there in Chapel Hill something you call Inner Christmas, and there's a
Oh,
website.
that was long before I came to Chapel Hill,
Oh, that's
but
before you got there. Okay.
um, I was a co-founder of a birthing center in Princeton, New Jersey, and I was a founding parent at the Princeton Waldorf School.
Wow.
And yeah, I realized after the work with the Princeton School, between the Birth Center and the Waldorf School, I had had enough impact. I thought, if that's all that's on my gravestone, my obituary, I've done it. But then I went on to do so much more. And,
Wow.
and you just did a presentation for the New York branch, which for 10 years I was, I gave more courses there than anybody else. So, uh, yeah.
Well, I've known about these, but I've never had a chance to be in the same room with you, as far as I know, Lynn. So I'm delighted to have you here. And I guess I will turn this over now to you and welcome Darlene and Pam. So, Lynn, over to you.
Okay. All right, everyone. So, um, yeah, this work on the threshold, I, have been working with the threshold experience actively for 22 years since I started Inner Christmas. And Inner Christmas began um, on December 22nd in 2004 when I was living in Jersey City and had gone into Manhattan. And Manhattan at Christmas time is a material delight. I mean, it's just fascinating. And I went by the Rockefeller Center and saw the tree. And behind me was Saks Fifth Avenue with all the electric lights, and there was electric music being piped in, and all the tourists with their cameras. And I got back to my place and I sent an email to about 260 people that were on my list, saying that, the electronic Christmas was fun, but there was something much more meaningful, and that was working with the Holy Nights. And I said, I always forget. I always start with the Holy Nights with the intention to live into that experience, but I forget. And so I said, I'm going to send you a message every day to remind you that we're in the Holy Nights. And then I thought, I shouldn't just send a message. I should offer something. There should be a theme for this inner work. Um, and so I chose the 12 senses, of course. How convenient. 12 senses, 12 holy nights. Uh, and first I thought every time I pressed send that I was spamming. But then I started getting all these notes thanking me and people saying, please add me to your list. And this grew. And those 12 days were the longest 12 days of my life. All right. I had to think and write a message every day. And now the 12 days go so quickly. It's like, I hate it when they end. Um, but I've done it every year. Every year I've chosen a new theme. And because the holy nights, well, I'm going to share my slides because do I have permission to share? No, I'm sending you a request. Okay, here we go. Because one of the best things about this presentation is an image that is pretty remarkable. Okay, and I'm going to, there we go. All right, filling the screen. Can you all see that? Um, okay, here is this image. And you'll see it a lot in this presentation. And it was made by AI. And I will share about that pretty soon. So, what I'm going to share with you is I'll talk about this image, I'll share about me, which I had started. I'm going to talk about distinctions around what is a threshold. I will look at what are threshold beings. I'll, I'm very briefly touching on preparations for the threshold. That's a whole other presentation I've decided. And then I will close with this remarkable image of coherence at the threshold and some possibilities for deepening this work. So here's this image again, and if you can see at the top, it's the cosmos. There's little stars, and then the earthly world below. And what I asked AI to do was to create an image using watercolors of a vertical luminous lemniscate with the crossing point at the horizon between Earth and cosmic space. Both the Earth and the cosmos are in dark, shadowy colors, but the horizon is bright like the crossing point of the lemniscate. And so this is what it came up with. And um, you'll have plenty of opportunity to look at it. I mean, we could just spend our time with this image created by artificial intelligence. But artificial intelligence is a misnomer. It is a large language model. All right. And one of the things that in my biography is when I was 9 years old, I got my first large language model, and that was an encyclopedia for children. And I read volume by volume. I wanted to know whatever I could know. One of the things I love about Rudolf Steiner is he is a large language model, what he knows and what he shared. And the questions that we could bring to him are large language models. So now we have a technological gift from the gods in this large language model, and it's a challenge to us to use it with wisdom, freedom, and love. And look what it came up with. And at the end, I'll share with you if you want to get a poster of this so you can live with this image. Um, I'll let you know. So, um, so here is this poetic image, and I have created other threshold images through my work. And this is the cruciform, it's the cross, it's the vertical and the horizontal. And in where they meet is this threshold experience of I am, of where spirit and matter are in balance and self and other are in balance. And so you have two directions, and it's really important to understand that we are here to incarnate, and we have to fully incarnate before we start attempting to ascend. We must descend first, and then we can ascend. And often when we meet the karma of trauma, it cuts off the descent. And that's a real challenge. And that's a Luciferic gesture, where the harmonic gesture wants to cut off the ascent. And then with connection between self and other, with antipathy and sympathy, uh, we are cut off by the Azores, who want no experience of we, only the experience of I and other. So there's no meeting point. So this is a really important understanding of two threshold axes that we live with every breath. Um, okay, there we go. And here is something else I've developed, which is really incredibly helpful in terms of the axes, what lives in the four quadrants. So between self and matter, we establish well-being, and that's health, wealth, and home. And we try and balance. And then between other and matter are our relationships with other people, with solitude. I mean, I'll go back to this later on, but even our enemies live in this quadrant. And then the quadrant of contribution, it's that how you've served, how you've had impact. It's not about your work. It's about how you show up in the world in giving and receiving. And then between spirit and self, it's your inner development and how you evolve. So again, these are threshold experiences. To get to the I is where the threshold lives. And I wanted to share that I took the image and did a 90 degrees. But we can look at this, and in these images, we're looking at a surface. All right, we're imagining space. But if the crossing point of the lemniscate, if you spend enough time, you move through the surface and you get to where everything is one, that there are no separations, there are no thresholds. And that's what I love about this image and working with it in a gazing meditative exercise. Okay, now about me. All right, so I told you a bit of what happened with Inner Christmas and how it just grew. But I also really wanted to let you know that what is my activity? How do I uh, live my work? And I said earlier, and some of you weren't there, is I am not here as a Steiner splainer. There are lots of Steiner splainers. I'm here as a spiritual researcher, a pedagogical guide, and a spiritual friend. And one thing I want to encourage all of you to consider is the distinction between the prophet and the priest. And and so important to start working with that. And to think of the transfiguration with Moses, with the lawfulness of the priest, and Elijah with the freedom of the prophet. And as a spiritual researcher, you must be grounded, but you must go out into the wilderness where you will find 1,000 paths to walk or no path to walk. And what it means to be able to bring through the priestly gesture frameworks, patterns, insights. It's very important. And then the work as a spiritual friend to witness and companion others, and to be willing to be witnessed and companioned by others. And in my 40 years of being connected to anthroposophy and Rudolf Steiner, I have focused. And I have focused on three things: the experience of self. I am a unique human being, and the direct experience of spirit, which is where this presentation is coming from. What is the threshold? And then incarnational success, which is knowing yourself and unfolding and evolving and transforming in each of the four quadrants of well-being, relationship, contribution, and inner development. And that's a framework, all right? This is all coming. I do the research, I create the frameworks, and I support and love others as they experience their own capacities. So I started with the Holy Night, so it's been 22 years. That's 270 some messages I've written because they're 14. I write an introductory um, Christmas Eve message, and then I close with the Epiphany message. And this year, the topic was 12 Illuminations of Incarnation. So the Holy Nights are a yearly threshold experience, and they're not a festival or a prediction, and they're not about presentations. I used to love when I was near the New York branch and it was so active when I was there that every night we could go, but it was always a different experience. And it was not the work of experiencing the threshold. It was about a collective festival or a set of presentations, all wonderful, which I dearly loved. But the threshold experience is in solitude. And you can also gather. I mean, now with Zoom, with my inner Christmas messages, I generally do perspectives with four topics with three perspectives each. And we gather every third night to ask questions, share experiences. We gather. And definitely gathering is this experience of whenever two or more are gathered. And and that's really important. And then I've had years and years of sacred conversations as a spiritual friend. And that's always the threshold of sympathy and antipathy. So it's important. Have sacred conversations and celebrate them. It's such a gift. So, now that you know a bit about me and my approach and the work I've done, I want to look at threshold distinctions. What is a threshold? And there is so much um, to sit down and look at all that we might experience as a threshold and what occurs at a threshold. So um, we have realms of threshold experiences, and there's a Latin word, solvere, which I use as a lens. And solvere means to loosen, release, untie, or set free. And there are four words that come from solvere, and that's to solve, to dissolve, to resolve, and to absolve. And if we look at the four realms of existence, which are space, time, relativity, and the absolute, which relate to the four bodies of the human being. And these perspectives of the object, of the flow, of the search, and of love. And I'm more than willing to send you these slides, but to work into what am I solving? What am I dissolving? What am I resolving? And what am I absolving? Um, it just leads to just thrilling uh, experiences, new understandings. Really helps you experience threshold consciousness. And yeah, it's again frameworks. How do you build these frameworks? How do you take words and go beyond words to meaning? Um, it's very important. And also to really understand what it means to be a physical being in space, an etheric being in time, an astral being in relativity, and a spirit being in the absolute. So, this is really important to bring into this distinguishing thresholds because we have thresholds in space, thresholds in time, thresholds in relativity. And the threshold of the absolute is where there are no more thresholds. All right, I want you to take this in with these great big words that we hear in anthroposophy all the time, but we may not actually know what they mean. So, these are three stages of threshold awareness, which is very much what Steiner was talking about with the levels of consciousness. So the sentient soul is phenomenological. It experiences through perception. The intellectual soul is epistemological. It experiences through um, understanding. And the consciousness soul is ontological. It experiences through knowledge or beingness. And our threshold awareness moves through these three gestures. And mostly what I'm sharing with you tonight is an epistemological perspective on the threshold. You may remember a phenomenological experience of the threshold, but we're really meeting today in epistemology. And ontologically, it's when you're at the threshold and you're going through uh, a threshold experience. So, a threshold experience is not, and it's very important to look at what things aren't as much as what things are. So, a threshold is not a story, it is not a feeling, it is not a goal, it is not a belief, and it is not a prediction. And these are all things that we want a threshold to be. We want to be able to tell a story about it. We want to have this beautiful feeling. We want our will to have a threshold experience as a goal. We want to have a set of beliefs around threshold. And we'd love to be able to predict. I read a beautiful essay on the modern experience of religion. And when during the mystery of Golgotha, there weren't religions, there were cultures. But it was with the beginning of the Roman Empire when suddenly spiritual culture became politicized, that um, we started thinking of religion as a belonging. And yeah, there's again, what is this threshold experience? And so here are a set of threshold experiences that I'll give you some examples as we go through this. Mm. So a threshold is an edge, a limit, or a liminal space. It's a betweenness. And it's wonderful to I think I had done probably 15 holy nights when I suddenly realized that our souls were going to the edge of spirit during the holy nights. That it was not just the lifting of the curtains, it was the ability to go to the edge, to be in that space between earthly consciousness and spiritual reality. And then we can think of a threshold as a crossing, a point where we cross from one reality to another. So, falling asleep and waking up are crossings. Being born and dying are crossings. These have to do, again, bringing in, is this about space? Is it about time? Is it about relativity? And then the meeting point, where the human being meets the divine, and when the divine meets the human, uh, where self meets other. So you can see why I showed you the previous images. And we want this to be a direct experience. We don't want to rely on a story about a meeting or a goal for a meeting, or a belief about a meeting. Then we've got threshold as a transition. So that, you know, God bless Goethe for saying, die and become. That's the greatest transition we can experience, to die and become. Um, One of in the experience of the mystery of Golgotha, um, Lazarus, come forth. Come forth is a direct call for the threshold of dying and becoming. The resurrection is a transition. The Pentecost is a transition. So there's so much to think about here. And then a threshold as a beginning. The whole Genesis understanding, each threshold described in Genesis in the beginning. And then the notion of, all right, so thresholds as a beginning, we see it in nature all the time, where we see in creativity, every time you take a paintbrush and put it on a white sheet of paper, it's a beginning, it's a threshold. Every time you write a word on even a blank email, it's a beginning. You're crossing a threshold of communication. There's research and there's technology. These are looking for new beginnings, and they certainly, all of this comes with a shadow and a question. I like calling AI a Promethean dilemma. And then there's the revelation. Um, oh, so no, forgot banishing. Banishing is really important. When you cross the threshold and you let go of your sense perceptions, you get let go of your dogma, you let go of your identities. Something is vanishing. And this is to have a vanishing threshold experience is can be extremely disorienting. And again, that's what I want to do in in actually a course on preparing for threshold experiences. Part of it is, how do you prepare for something to vanish that identifies you, that is a personal dogma, the vanishing, and then a revelation of a revelation of truth, beauty, and goodness, a revelation of wisdom, freedom, or love. These are all threshold experiences. So um, these bring up a lot of questions and a lot of clarity. It's stay with it, work with your questions. I really encourage people to do questions only. So the spiritual world is not interested in our answers. That's materialistic thinking. It only interested in our questions. So the more you develop your ability to ask questions without seeking answers, without wanting to be right, then then you will start getting downloads. I always call my research experiences downloads because they're not coming out of my ordinary existence. They're not coming out of something I've learned. They're just this showing up, this revelation. And suddenly I'm letting go of something or I'm beginning something. I I didn't set out to understand threshold experiences. And here I am sharing this. Where did it come from? So be courageous and be trusting. Don't hesitate to doubt. Um, Yeah, to have the degree of humility and confidence to doubt is just wonderful in regards to threshold experiences. So, here I want to share three thresholds that are really very important, but I think I'll let us take a bit of a breath here and just meditate on this image. And because I'm giving you a lot of frameworks. And you need to rest to digest. That's why we have the um, 12th cranial nerve, the vagus nerve. Okay. So, thresholds of incarnation and selfhood. All right. So, this is looking at what goes on in these four quadrants and how we incarnate successfully. So, when you look at your experience of well-being, how are you incarnating? What challenges your incarnation into the experience of well-being? All right, which is your health and your wealth and your home. What is that like for you? What are the thresholds you're resisting? Or that is scary? What seems more like an abyss than a threshold in each of these areas? When you look at yourself as incarnating into and through relationship, what are your thresholds around solitude? I used to be terrified of being alone. Now I love being alone. Somehow I've experienced that threshold and it's given me an experience of being safe, calm, awake, and nourished by myself. I've had enormous challenges with thresholds, dark thresholds around family. What has been my experience of friendship, of spouses or lovers, and of enemies, and then teachers. All of us here tonight have an experience of a threshold with Rudolf Steiner. It's wonderful to think of relationships as threshold experiences in the realm of incarnation. And then contribution. What is your threshold of receiving? What is your threshold of giving? What is your threshold of impact and purpose? And these are threshold questions. And again, share your experience and work with phenomenology, epistemology, and ontology. This you have to do on your own. Thresholds are begin in solitude and your own experience, your own direct experience, and your willingness to question and doubt, to die and become. And then your inner development, your unfolding and evolving and transforming in your psychospiritual existence. What are the thresholds you've met there? And these are so important. If you do any of this work, you will feel a selfhood. You will experience that I am in the center. And it will be, it will be a greater unfolding, evolving, and transforming of the I. It will change your experience of well-being. Did you incarnate to struggle? All right. What that is a threshold. Are you willing to struggle? Are you willing to cross the threshold to equanimity when things are not a story that you want, but an experience you're having? So there's just a lot here. And then we've got the thresholds of consciousness and soul. All right. So thresholds of truth, thresholds of beauty, thresholds of goodness. What thresholds do you experience, as crossing, as betweenness, as meeting, as transition, as beginning, as vanishing, as revelation in your thinking, your feeling, and your will? And then how do you make choices? Every choice you make is a threshold. So thinking, and this is really important to understand that the soul and the thresholds of the soul are between the experience of spirit and the experience of life and the etheric. So thinking crosses into spirit. Thinking needs to become willing through the bridge of feeling, and then willing allows you to cross into time and space. So these are activities, threshold activities in the soul. And then we go to the spirit, thresholds of spirit and love. So here we have the threshold of experiencing source, divine source, thresholds of experiencing divine force, and thresholds of experiencing divine gesture, karma and destiny. And then we have the thresholds of imagination, inspiration, and intuition, which I'll be talking about in a few slides. But these are the spiritual thresholds and the thresholds of love. Because when you experience divine source, divine force, and divine gesture, it's love. I had someone asking me if where our sense of being human and our striving had to do with remembering a perfected state from the past or anticipating a perfected state in the future. And I didn't like either one of those ideas, but I respected her question. And I took it with me into sleep. And in the middle of the night, I woke up and suddenly what I'm hearing and feeling is Steiner saying that the 10th hierarchy, the human being, is here to become the spirits of love. And it doesn't matter if you want this experience of being a perfected human being to come from the past or the future. Does it awaken love? Is it a new understanding of love as source, force, and gesture? Does it give you an imagination of love, an inspiration of love, or an intuition of love? So now, beings of the threshold. I don't know how many of you, like me, the first of Steiner's work that you experienced was how to know higher worlds and the beings, the lesser guardian and the greater guardian. So let's see what meets when we come to that threshold. So I, with the research around spirit, uh, I have come to see angels, archangels, and archai as the interactors with the human being. All right, we have the exousiae and the dynamis and the caryatides are the creators, and the thrones and the cherubim and the seraphim are the essences. So that's helped me to make those distinctions. And we all want to find the distinctions that help us meet the threshold. So your angel knows your unique selfhood of this lifetime. I am Lynn. I will never be Lynn again. I am a unique gesture of imagination with limits of all kinds. What makes me Lynn are my limits and my imperfections. And the lesser guardian is my angel. It reveals to me my problems, my challenges, my resistances. It holds the mirror up to my ego, my egotism, my judgments, my opinions, the noise and the nonsense that goes on in my life. That's the lesser guardian. And, it takes years of developing equanimity to befriend the lesser guardian and to know it's your angel. Your angel is not here to protect your innocence. It's here to protect your destiny. It's here to push you off the edge. So that's your angel. That's the lesser guardian. This is a major being that guards the threshold. And then we have the archangels. The archangels know the universal human being, all that could possibly incarnate and exist. And it brings the force of inspiration. No thought, no will, pure feeling. And this is the greater guardian. These are the archangels. They forgive, they grieve, and they celebrate what lives in you as universal and is shaped by what your angel protects as your unique gesture. And forgiving, grieving, and celebrating as a daily reflection, with forgiving, you're understanding what something was given for. And when you grieve, you're releasing attachment, you're experiencing loss. There's no loss in the spiritual world. Every moment in earthly existence is a loss, and you celebrate every possible micro nano experience of your life. That's love. Forgive, knowing what things are given for is wisdom. Being able to grieve with equanimity and release all attachments is freedom. And being able to celebrate everything is love. These are threshold experiences. The archangels hold all that you can aspire for. The angels are about what you actually are. The archangels are about what you aspire to be. And the archai are what you are becoming. The archai are the source of the unknown and yet to be. There is no thought or imagination, no feeling or inspiration. They offer us pure will and intuition. And, we don't, it's the mystery of becoming. So to think of these three beings as the beings of the threshold that we as human beings are meeting. It's we don't go to the threshold and see a giant party of all the hierarchies. We see these specific beings. And to have these distinctions can really help you discern your threshold experiences. So now we come to this very extraordinary experience of the coherence of the threshold. And it's really something. So a threshold is an eternal, invisible, infinite coherence. It's not a destination or event. It's not in space or in time. Spirit and matter cohere in threshold consciousness. It is neither a space, a time, nor a relationship. It's not a perceiving or an understanding. It's a knowing. It's inner coherence. And this is the way, the spiritual world has a huge, unbelievable sense of humor. And today, as I was chilling out, I had been working on these slides, and I tend to bring my iPad when I'm eating a meal and watch something that blots my mind. And so I was watching Murder Mystery, of course, a detective show, and this word was spoken, syzygy. And I just couldn't believe it because this is a threshold word. It comes from the Greek, Sagia, meaning yoked together. In astronomy, it's the alignment of three celestial bodies, like the sun, the earth, and the moon at eclipses, or at full moon and new moon. And it certainly exists in Gnosticism and Jungian psychology. It's the union, the alignment, the harmony of um, two or more. And that, again, when Steiner says, and this is one of my favorites, when to get anywhere near the truth, you need 12 points of view, and they have to align. And that's syzygy. So this was a gift through the mindless technology of Netflix. Um, that was a gift. And I could see it as a gift. Why would that word, I mean, who uses that word? Who puts it in a script in a detective show? I mean, it's crazy. It was direct spiritual gift. And of course, you feel absolutely weird and nuts when you say something like that, but that's my truth. So here is also a truth. This this threshold coherence at its most extraordinary expression. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. So, this work with the threshold is this ability to cohere, to be the Word, and to be the Word that was with God, and to be the Word that was God. All right. In the beginning was the Word. This is the angel holding your gesture. All right. The Word was with God. This is all that is possible if you cross this threshold. And the Word was God. There is no longer any distinction. It's pure syzygy. So this is, you know, it's just breathtaking and breath giving. So there is preparation for these experiences. And I'm not going into them tonight. I've certainly given enough and we need to digest it, but there are 7 preparations, uh, and it's a well-designed path to establish the sobriety, equanimity, and courage to experience the threshold. And 3 obvious experiences are the 6 subsidiary exercises that Steiner gives several times in several ways. It's the experience of getting to motive. So Steiner talks about will as living in instinct, in impulse, and in desire. Instinct relates to the physical self. Impulse relates to the etheric self. Desire relates to the astral self. And motive relates to the self-full and unselfish motive. It's not about altruism. Altruism is a desire. It's the desire to sacrifice. Motive lives beyond all those stories. And then wilderness, the 40 days in the wilderness, what were they about? They were about the 4 terrors of being human that the Christ had to experience before he could go forth. And the wilderness work is enormous. And there are at least 3 other preparations. So, and there's also what is the post-threshold gesture from extraordinary back to ordinary. And after a threshold experience, you can then begin deeper research. You can provide education. You can mentor, counsel, and coach through spiritual friendship. So this is my email, lynnjericho@gmail.com. If you would like to order a poster, I have it all set up to get a poster that's about, I think it's 31 inches by 24 inches, something like that. And I can send you the link. If you're interested in a sacred conversation with me, if you'd like to take the Threshold Path course, which is about preparation, and then the course that I've worked with my membership this year, which is Equanimity in the Wilderness, I will be happy to share information about that. And also my Substack, which is free or paid for where I share all my work. And I've really been focusing on triads, um, like the triad of angel, archangel, and archai. Um, yeah, or problems, challenges, and resistances, all these triads that live in experiencing being human. So, yes, so that's my contribution this evening. I want to thank you for listening, and I hope we have some time for a good, rich, juicy conversation.
Exactly. We can go into Q&A for a good 20 minutes or so. And thank you so much, Lynn. This was just a fabulous, especially this time of year. And, it's the day after Epiphany, but, with the Gregorian calendar and,
Right. There's
and
Orthodox
Julian calendar.
Christianity. It's Christmas Eve in Orthodox Christianity.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah,
So it's still a good time to have you here for this. So thank you.
good.
And let's take questions on the bottom where it says react. If you click on that, you can raise your hand and then I'll know. If you can't figure that out, if you're on an iPad or something of this nature, just turn your
Shout
camera on
out.
and raise your hand. And Barbara's got her hand up. So unmute Barbara and no, unmute Barbara.
You're muted. Yeah.
I'm sending you if you follow what just showed up, you're asked to unmute. It'll help you unmute. While she's figuring it out, I will ask a question of you, Lynn, or it's not so much a question. The Come on, Andrew, what happened to it?
Okay, now
Oh,
I can
Barbara's
ask.
ready. Barbara's here.
Oh, okay, I found what I was going to ask too, though. Sorry, Barbara.
Okay, or it's just about willing. You had this, there were so many things you said. It's just so rich. But you said, thank you for everything. As you said that willing crosses into time and space.
Ace.
That's a very hard concept for me to get my head around.
All right. So everything you do with your will, all right, is a deed that shows up in time and space. All right. If you will to wave your hand, you're moving your hand in space and in time.
Hmm.
All right. It's active. That's why it's so important to spend time looking at what is space, what is time, what is relativity, and what is absolute. So the
Okay.
will is the soul making something active in time and space.
Okay, great. That
That makes sense, Barbara?
that makes perfect sense.
Good.
Right. Hmm. Thank you.
I'm going to add to that, Barbara, for your sake.
Yes. Hmm.
But this question comes up about how can the stars, the constellations that are thousands of light years apart from each other, influence our lives when it takes thousands of years for the light from any one star to come here? And you get a sense of this if you take what Lynn just said, that this willed thinking from these stars actually is arriving instantaneously by looking at, in our concept of general relativity from Einstein, an individual photon, which doesn't exist, but let's take it from science. When it is created, when it's emitted, we say it travels from that star to when it reaches our retina, and then I see the star.
Hmm.
And from our perspective, it took thousands of years. But if you ask the photon, how long did it take and how far did you travel? The photon's going to tell you It was instantaneous. I
Right.
didn't travel at all. I went from emission to your retina instantaneously. Now that's really hard to get your head around, I know, and that's where quantum physics is
So
helping
awesome.
us understand, breaking this threshold that Lynn's been talking about, that science wants to hold us behind, doesn't want to, it's set its own boundary
Mhm.
with the material world and these concepts of space and time. When you cross that, space and time disappear.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
don't know if that
that's great,
helps.
Andrew. And am I correct in thinking that the perception that the stars are these light years away is a phenomenological understanding,
Right.
and then to get to the ontological, it's instantaneous, right? Yeah.
Well said. So I remember my question, and this
Okay.
word uh, syzygy
Yeah.
is used by Mani. And
Oh, it is. Really?
yes, it's
Okay.
very key in Mani's early works, and it's sometimes translated as his twin,
Oh, okay.
which is
That's
interesting.
great. I didn't know that. Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah.
Well, remember, raise your hand. I'm sure some of you else have questions. I will make a comment. I thought the Promethean dilemma was excellent. And I don't know if you want to expand on that as a kind of definition of AI, which I like to call aromonic intelligence as opposed to artificial.
But it's also quite luciferic too. I mean, that's why it's so important to understand sobriety, equanimity, and courage, because we can only use these technological gifts if we can use them with sobriety, not get intoxicated by them, either materialistically or spiritually. I
Or
mean,
by
the anti-AI spiritual gesture is an intoxication.
mm,
And, um, to be sober, to be here, these are tools, and they're very demanding um, of us because we have to be practically, morally, and spiritually awake when we use them, and we have to have equanimity, and we have to have courage.
yeah.
So, yeah. But I would not call it harmonic intelligence, Andrew. It's uh,
Could
So
I stick
so
my
so
nose in here?
Prometheus and the dilemma is that are we willing to be like Prometheus? And you have to, um, is it in Cosmic Memory that Steiner talks about Prometheus and Hercules and Chiron?
oh yeah, it could be there. It's also in this book right here.
Right, the temple, that's what it's in. It's in the temple legend, yes. So if you read that and start understanding the Promethean dilemma and the majesty, I mean, it's extraordinary to know that we have to be willing to suffer. When Steiner says wisdom is crystallized suffering, and for years, I only thought about uh, wisdom equals suffering, suffering equals wisdom. And I did not pay attention to the word crystallizing. And that's the key. That's the alchemical key that we have to work with in all our questions, all our anthroposophical questions. We cannot rely on what Steiner said. We have to understand how he thought and what questions were living in him.
Yeah.
So,
So to Prometheus, I'll add something, which is Hephaestus. And when Zeus wanted something done, this punishment, he asked the god of technology, Hephaestus, to make these chains, to chain him to what? The
right,
lifeless kingdom, the mineral kingdom.
right.
And, here we are. in that
And
age.
then
We are all Prometheus. And how do we get out? Well, there's two things. One, we've got to become godlike by being Heraclean, by doing the labors of the zodiac. And then we have to sacrifice our Chiron, our, our centaur within.
because he was an immortal who had created for Heracles the poison that there was no cure for. And oh God, it's such an amazing story. And Heracles dipped his arrows in the poison and shot it into the air, and it went rogue. It went wild, and it then went in, and it's like Amphortis. It wounded Chiron, or you say Chiron? Yeah,
Chiron, that's how I pronounce
right.
it.
In the groin, all right, in his animal part. And he could, because he was an immortal, he couldn't die. But because it was a mortal poison, he couldn't live either. So when Zeus gives Her Heracles the and with great arrogance says, "Well, if you can find a mortal willing to give up an immortal willing to give up their immortality, I'll set Prometheus free." And Heracles knew Chiron could neither live nor die. He would choose death if, and so he made that sacrifice. He gave up his
Right.
immortality and set Prometheus free. So how do we do that
Right.
today in ourselves, in our little lives? Yeah.
Thank you, Lynn. Wonderful. Joel, you had a question or a comment, and you might turn on your
Uh,
camera.
can you hear
You-
me? My
Okay.
Yes.
camera's not working, so
Yes, we can
there's
now.
an image, right? You see the image?
Mhm.
No, just go ahead. Nowadays, Zoom doesn't let us see image, the
Well, I see an image on my screen of
right.
Nick.
But we can hear you.
Okay, so uh, that well, it was amazing, uh, and on a certain level, I felt like I'm a Platonist listening to an Aristotle. And as a Platonist, I go for initiation and threshold experiences with the divine feminine. You know, that's what Socrates and Plato were both in those mysteries. So anyway, I'm 85. I've had a lot of interesting experiences. I'm not going to bore any people with that, but I had a feeling during this. This had to do with a puzzle that was very hard for me to deal with over many years. I started getting into spiritual stuff when I was about 31 and living in the Berkeley, California area. So there was a whole lot of
Joel,
stuff
can
to
you
learn.
go
And
to a
what?
question instead of a biography? Joel, can you go to a question instead of a biography? Because we don't have much time. We've got to stop at 8:15.
Okay, I I don't want to ask a question. I want to make a statement
Good.
discouraging
Okay, well,
people
can you do it?
from from expecting too much of themselves and setting goals. What I found when I wrote my first book, I had to write about what I considered to be the virtues of ordinary mind. And the fact is, whatever changes I went through and the initiations and everything, the main thing was my ordinary mind. And that's, I think, as you recognize, it's the will that gets trained during these exercises. And I don't see anybody moving, so maybe I got cut off.
No, you're here. Can you
Anyway, I'm
find?
done.
Okay, Joel. Thank you. I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, Louise, come off of mute.
I see
There
we
we go.
only have about 2 minutes, so I'll be very brief. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about grieving with equanimity and what you mean by that. And s- you said something about how all that leads to love, and I wonder if that's a
Oh, you
higher
mean when
or
I spoke about forgiving, grieving, and celebrating?
yeah, like
All right.
when you were talking about that, I'm just um, trying to understand what that process is,
All
what
right.
that means.
Um, it's like a rickshaw. At the end of every day, if you look at what you're forgiving, so all that disturbed you, that harmed you, that got in your way, um, why did it, what was the purpose of that? Because nothing is without purpose. And when you understand what that was given for, you become wise. All right. It's the crystallizing of suffering that leads to wisdom. And when you grieve, you develop it as a capacity that you are really working on and embracing. You are, because we grieve loss of what's attached to our sense of self. And so, in order to practice grieving, when we get so that grieving is an art and is a full expression of self, we become free because we're no longer attached to anything. And then when we celebrate everything, we become love. Love celebrates all. And that's that. And so to do that as a nightly rickshaw, a review of your day, it's really important. And then there's the preparation for tomorrow, which is what is the question you're taking into your sleep, and what is your intention for the next day, which you need the support of the spiritual world that you experience in sleep.
So you weren't really talking about grieving a person, you were talking about
It's
grieving.
part of it. Part of it is grieving a person because we're attached to that person. We feel it is part of our life. And
Yes.
when that is gone, we go into grief. But we have to grieve both the macro griefs, which is, losing a spouse or a child or a parent or a home, um, what is lost, but also the little losses. And it's a lot. It's not easy to look at the little losses that occur every day, but it's important, or we'll never be free. We'll always be attached.
Okay, so equanimity is when we reach a point where we can experience our grief without
Yeah,
wanting to change what's
equanimity
happened.
is it's not about, I mean, nowadays the buzzword is nervous system regulation, that equanimity is not about perfection. Equanimity is about right response to all imperfections. So, again, we're not here to perfect our story. What I love saying is we do not incarnate for a day at the beach. Yeah.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
incarnate to suffer. Yeah. I mean, the
Well,
Christ, I mean, we just have to, Christ consciousness.
Well,
thank you.
thank you, Louise. Before we close, I had a question which I really wanted to ask, and that is um, the threshold experience, does it evolve with the evolution of consciousness?
Mm.
Do what people experience today differ from what people did 500, 1,000, 2,000 years ago? And what do you see in terms of the threshold helping us to prepare for the future? And you
Okay,
mentioned
that's a whole
prophecy.
other presentation, Andrew. Oh
Oh,
my
oh,
God.
okay, I'll come again. Right. But
Yeah,
you've
no,
thought about this. Right.
that's certainly important. And There's a whole new stream of theology out of Alfred Whitehead called process theology that's all about God evolves and we evolve, you know. So it's really fascinating. Yeah,
Yeah, Matt Siegel is, I don't know if you know that name, but great scholar of Whitehead.
yeah, yeah. So
So
it's wonderful. So thank you all for being
Thank
such
you.
That was
an
great.
audience.
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you.
Really very
I'm going
interesting.
to read a closing verse.
All right,
May
but
I
I
read a
also want to
closing
say
verse, please?
lynnjericho@gmail.com. So if you want, again, if you want to live with a poster of that image, let me know and I'll send you the link. If you want the slides, I can send you those. Andrew, you're going to send me the recording, please. And
I
yeah,
can.
and if you're interested in my courses or one-on-one conversation, it's what I love doing. Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much. And there's a lot of, Lynn, thank you again, and God bless, and um, may we all take this into our sleep tonight, that we all can progress from our threshold experiences. So thank you, Lynn, for sharing tonight. Good night, all, and
Night.
see you again in a month. If hopefully, if you want to come again next month. Bye for now.
Goodbye.